Hello chess friends and welcome to the channel. Yesterday at the Tata Steel 2019, two decisive games were played. Anish Giri won a great game against Duda and Magnus Carlsen played one of his wonderful endgames against Mamedyarov. Yesterday evening I uploaded the Duda Giri game and today I'm going to show you Carlsen and Mamedyarov. With those wins, Giri and Carlsen became co-leaders of the tournament with Ding and Nepomniachtchi. But now let's start with today's game. Carlsen with the white pieces opens with knight to f3 and Mamedyarov answers with d5. d4, knight to f6 and now c4. Mamedyarov captures the pawn and we are in the queen's gambit accepted. e3 that discovers the bishop attack to the c-pawn and Mamedyarov doesn't even try to defend that pawn and follows the main line. e6. Bishop captures on c4, c5 attacking d4, castle for white and now a6 with a probable idea of playing b5, b3, b6 instead of b5, d captures on c5, here comes the queen exchange, queen captures on d1, rook recaptures on d1 and bishop captures on c5. Bishop in fianchetto to b2, knight in b goes to d7 and knight in b goes to d2. You see that the position is quite similar, quite symmetric. Bishop to b7 and now bishop to e2 because the black pawn structure was limiting the light bishop activity on this diagonal. Castle for black, the position is equal, white has a better rook placement and maybe black's light bishop is a bit better than white's. Knight to c4, rook in f goes to c8. I have 20 games in database with this position with the score of 50%. Here generally rook in a goes to c1, but Carlsen plays something different. Knight to e1, a line where white scores really good, 3 wins and 2 draws. Bishop to d5. Now what happens if b5 now? If b5 attacking the knight, this allows knight to a5 and the knight in that position is really dangerous because now this bishop has nowhere to go, has some little space. Bishop to d5 is possible. Now rook in a goes to c1 attacking the other bishop and rook in a goes to c8. Seems that white is a bit better in this position. So instead of b5, after knight to e1, bishop to d5, rook in a goes to c1 and rook in a goes to c8. Knight to d3 hitting the bishop moves back to e7. Now knight in c goes to e5 and again bishop to b7 protecting a6 that is under an indirect attack of the bishop on e2. Knight to c4 again bishop to d5, knight to d2 and again bishop to b7. King to f1 and h6. Bishop to f3 and capturing the bishop is not a bad idea, but Mamedyarov plays knight to d5, knight to c4 and here comes b5 attacking the knight. Now comes that knight maneuver that we watched before. Knight goes to a5 attacking the bishop goes back to a8 and here Carlsen plays a3. What is the idea? The idea is to play b4 that clears the b3 square for the knight. The knight will maneuver until the knight goes to c5 and from there can attack the a6 pawn. Mamedyarov must do something and he thinks about some counterplay on the king side. He plays g5. Here comes h3 at first, controlling g4, f5, now b4, king to s7 that improves the position of the king and also clears the h file. Knight goes to b3 with Carlsen that starts that knight maneuver. Bishop to f6 and this is a move that is logical because the bishop on d7 was limited by this pawn structure, but this move also has a downside, because when the bishop will be exchanged, it's true that Mamedyarov was able to exchange a better bishop than his own bishop, but this bishop on d7 was controlling c5 with the knight, and without this bishop, one of the two knights can really jump on c5. So probably after bishop captures on f6 and king recaptures on f6, this exchange favors a bit white. Knight in b goes to c5, attacking the pawn, and knight goes to b6. Let's watch this variation. If knight captures, bishop captures on f3, g recaptures, and now knight to c4, attacking a3. So the pawn is under attack, and this knight is on the rim. And if instead of knight capture first, if bishop captures on a8, then the rook recapturing on a8 will protect the pawn. So this second line doesn't give really anything to white. Instead of capturing, Carlsen plays bishop to e2. Now goes knight to c4, a4, knight in d goes to b6, and a5 attacking the knight. Knight to d5, and Carlsen now can finally capture on a6, but Mamedyarov already found a tactical counterplay. Knight captures on a6, here comes knight capture on d3 with check, that is also a fork, the pawn recaptures, and here the second knight gives the second fork and will win the quality. King to g1 and knight captures on d1. After rook captures on d1 and rook to c2, we see that Mamedyarov was a beautiful idea, and it seems that he has even more activity than Carlsen. Carlsen plays bishop to f3. Let's watch what happens if the bishop are exchanged. If bishop captures on f3, g recaptures, and now comes rook to d4. You see that the rook wants to move to attack the pawns. The king can't move forward to protect the pawns because the black rook is controlling the second rank. And so after rook to d4, the knight goes back into the action to c5, protecting the knight, but also clearing the way for this pawn to advance. But here comes rook to h4, if a6, rook captures. Now, rook to a1, if not, the black rook will move behind the pawn, and the pawn can't advance anymore. Here comes rook to g3 with check, king to h1, and again rook to h3 with check. If the king goes back, again rook check, king to f1, rook capture with check, and we see that this will become a draw by repetition. But even if white wants to try to avoid this repetition, playing king to e1, here comes rook to h3 with the idea of checkmating one on h1. So white must be careful, because must play king to d1. The second rook comes to the second rank, protecting the rook on c2. And again here white must be careful, because a7 lose the match. After rook to c2 with check, king to e1, there is the skewer, rook to h1 with check, one rook is lost. One rook is gained, but also this pawn is gained, and this is the only good element in white's position. So after the second rook comes to the second rank, the move to play is to put this rook into safety, rook to a5, but here again comes a repetition, and it's a draw. But Mamedyarov doesn't capture the bishop on f3. He plays another fine move, bishop to e4. Now the knight goes back to c5, attacking the bishop. Bishop captures knight, rook captures, and knight recaptures on d3. After e5, played by Mamedyarov, the game is still equal, and both players reach the time control, so there is plenty of time to think. After some time, Carlsen plays bishop to b7, beautiful move. Here comes e4, hitting the knight, knight to c5, and we see that here is white strength, and here is black counterplay. King to e5, good move. Now a6, rook to a2 with the rook behind the pawn, bishop to c6, there is no way to protect this pawn, and here Mamedyarov makes a terrible mistake. Instead of playing e3, here comes bishop captures on b5, that this bishop is strong because it's also protecting this diagonal, but after king to d4, hitting also the knight, king to f1, protecting from the pawn advance, f4, here knight to a4, a beautiful idea to shield the pawn, and now the rook will never be able to protect from this pawn advance, but there is no time to promote to queen because we enter into another draw by repetition line. Rook to a1 we check, king to e2, rook to a2, the king can't move to f1, to f3, or the game is lost, and so must go back again, and the rook will give again check on the first and second rank, and this is a draw. Instead of playing e3, Mamedyarov plays h5, and this is too slow. Here comes bishop captures on b5, g4, h captures, and the winning move, bishop to c4. With tempo attacking the rook, this bishop move will create passed and connected pawns. Rook to a1 we check, king to h2, here comes f4, but there is b5, and these two pawns are really powerful. f3, b6, king to f4, a last trick, because now if b7 blacks gives checkmate, g3 we check, king to h3, and rook to h1 is checkmate. But Carlsen plays wonderful move, knight captures on e4. Now in case of g3, the knight will capture the pawn, and Mamedyarov resigns, because let's watch another couple of moves. King captures e4, b7, rook to b1, the rook behind the most advanced pawn, but the two pawns are too far advanced. Here comes a7, and one of these two pawns will promote to queen. So a long game, great victory, complex endgame, and after the match Carlsen said that he was really happy because the game was not a wonderful game, but he was happy that he was able to keep his concentration until the end, and that's how he won a game that should be a draw. And this is how many games are won or lost. Consistency until the end of the game gives players many points. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. For now, thanks for watching, and see you later for round 7 of the Tata Steel 2019.